My name is Bill Lunsford, and I'm an illustrator, and a cartoonist, and a teacher. My earliest memory of drawing was when my mother asked me to draw stuff. So I can specifically remember she would say, okay, draw a boat. This is how a boat looks. And I would say, all right. And then she would look at it, and then she would say, okay, now draw an airplane. And that's how I started drawing. That's what I remember. My father was an engineer. He was a NASA engineer. So that wasn't kind of like the thing that he would say. If I drew something, he said, well, why did you study math? But lucky enough, just living next door to me, I think when I was about 13 or 14, was an actual commercial artist. This is the first time I ever talked to a commercial artist. He was a big commercial artist for General Motors. He designed and did a lot of the car stuff. So every once in a while, I would take my art, when he had time, and show it to him. So he would give me some tips. Those were my first things as far as to see a real artist. He showed me like some of his work, so that was awesome. The other earliest memory that I had about wanting to be an artist was drawing comics. So I used to just draw comics all the time. But back then, it was like, 1964, 65. There was no YouTube, no internet. There was no way to say like, oh, how can this like little Bill Lunsford go from like drawing, from his comic books to becoming a comic book artist. I finally found an internship with Marvel Comics with John Buscema School of Comic Art. So I applied for that and I got accepted. And actually he called me, and I thought it was like not real because he was like really famous. But he finally convinced me this was real. And so I got that, and I was on my way to New York. When I finally did get to New York, and I finally did get to see real artists, real commercial artists, actually work and actually like draw a figure. Because I remember like at the first class I studied under Don Heck. He's the guy that drew Iron Man. He's a very famous artist. And the first time I saw him draw a figure like that quick, he just took a magic marker and had a big sheet of paper on the wall. And he just like whipped out Iron Man, 15 seconds. I was like, what? I said, that's how you do it. So that light bulb went off. So Reagan's Raiders was a comic, I think in 1986, 1987 by Solson Comics. And the inventor of that was Rich Buckler, whom I met when I was at Marvel Comics. He branched off from Marvel and he started his own company. And it was kind of it's a cult favorite. It's kind of an interesting concept where they took the president, Ronald Reagan, and they made him a superhero, right? And then they took his whole cabinet, and that was the Reagan's Raiders. So they would have a series of stories. I think the first one I worked on was Reagan and his team landed in Nam, and they took out all the prisoner of war prisoners that the country had not at that point been able to get. So that's what the premise was. How it happened was there was a big talent search, right, for Solson's Comics, and I saw the talent search, and as usual, I did the 5-page story and I sent it to them. And a few weeks later, I got a phone call actually from Rich Buckler, and he said, "You won the talent search." I said, "Okay." He said, "So I'm going to give you a 5-page, I think it was a 5-page science fiction story first." So I did that. I still have that. And then he said, "Okay, great. You did great in that." He said, "How would you like to do Reagan's Raiders?" So that's how I got the job. The thing that probably has never changed is that talent doesn't have as much to do with being an artist as it does with perseverance and practice and just doing it over and over again. Sometimes you just got to take a chance. That was another thing. They were doing a talent search nationwide for artists, illustrators, painters, that had been mural artists. And since I had experience in outdoor advertising, what's the same? If you're going to do billboards, isn't that a big mural? and there was going to be like maybe, I think, 900, 1,000 murals. So I worked for them for 2 years until we reached that goal. But I've stayed in this field for 40 years plus now. Growing up in Detroit, having to deal with that type of tough environment, I understand what it's like to be a kid. I understand what it's like, to get knocked down, to go through those tough things. And what I try to do is I try to bring all that experience, because I say to the kids, the first thing I say is, I'm not just here teaching art. A lot of you guys, you're never going to be an artist, but whatever you're going to be always involves practice and discipline. I think I teach that more than I even teach art.